good to see you again. I don't know if you know this, but as of the end of this semester, I'm officially halfway done with seminary. I'm 3 semesters in. I have 3 semesters to go. I also don't know if you know this, but in September I turned 30. And so naturally, as I go through all of these milestones, it's been a year full of reflection, looking back, pondering, thinking about the past, the present, and the future. And amid all the scholarship that I've been able to be a part of in Princeton, rubbing shoulders with some of the current and likely future world-class theological and biblical scholars, I'm immersed in theories, thought exercises, debates, disagreements, papers, presentations, posturing, questioning, discernment, and insights beyond what I ever really knew was possible. And yet, amid all of these imaginative readings, rhetorical devices, shocking metaphors, queering of the text, and exegetical interpretations, I can't help but wonder, what's the point? And I don't just mean about higher education. I mean, what's the point of gathering here, right now? Singing our songs that we're singing, saying the words that we say, and hearing yet another sermon from Ben before he's actually taken a sermon class in seminary. Not only why do we gather, but why do we call ourselves Christians? Why do we organize ourselves into an institution and then call it church or a denomination? What does it even mean that we do all of these things? Who cares? What's the point? Sometimes when I'm surrounded by people who are studying God, who are researching Christian history, who are translating the Bible, who are pontificating of the efficacy on ecclesial gatherings, it can be easy to feel like it's all just one big thought exercise. And I'll be honest, I often write papers that have very little to do with any actual faithful reflection, and simply regurgitate dead and empty facts or arguments into a format that I know will compel the professor to give me a decent grade. This would be great. This would be fantastic if the point was to get an A. But is that the whole point? If I'm honest, I've felt similar things working in churches. When I spend my days in committees, meetings, planning, and prepping, it can be easy to make the whole point about maintaining the system, the institution, the practices of faith. Some days the point is that we have to have the order of worship completed on time, that we have an agenda for the next meeting sent out, that we have enough money to keep paying the electricity bill or fix the wonky air conditioning system. Sometimes the point is that we get our kids into church on time so that they can learn the same sense of morality that we learned, so that they can run the institution of the church when we are gone and keep repairing the AC, keep sending their kids on trips that we loved sending them to, keep opening the doors and filling the pews. That would be great if the point is just that we keep the machine rolling. But is that the whole point? John the Baptist, as we just read, was not really good at maintaining institutions. John was not really good at repairing the AC. John was not very good at getting passing grades on his theology papers. People who are good at those things usually live a long life in relative comfort. John was beheaded because he was bad at just keeping the ball rolling. But if John was so bad at maintaining spiritual traditions, upholding historical faithful practices, passing down the morality to the next generation, or even getting an A on his exegetical paper, then why do we read about him so often? Why do we celebrate his ministry so much? why do we listen to him at all? We read about, we celebrate, and we listen to John because he knew something that I often forget. John knew something that, as I'm learning, the founders of our Reformed tradition heard and listened to. John lived out something that informs every step of our worship here today. John knew that the point wasn't just to maintain traditional worship practices simply because they're tradition. He knew that the point wasn't just keeping the doors of the sanctuary open. He knew that the point wasn't just instilling the next generation with a sense of morality that matches ours. John knew that the point was that God is a powerful and loving being who acts. God acts. God acts is active. God is personally present. And when God acts, we cannot help but respond to God's actions. We see this at the very end of our passage when John says, I myself have seen and testified that this is the chosen one. We also see it pretty clearly in the account of the shepherds. They encountered the divine in inexplicable and amazing ways, and they had to go out and tell everyone about it. I have seen, and thus I must testify. As a good Presbyterian minister to be, I've been reading the Book of Order a lot lately, and in the Book of Order is a directory for worship. I read the whole thing for a class. And there's a phenomenon that they call the rhythm of divine action and human response. And the Peace USA Church says that it shapes all of Christian faith, life, and worship. We model our faith as Reformed Christians on the sovereignty of God by ordering our worship in such a way that acknowledges God's actions and facilitates our corporate response. We begin with a call to worship, which is God's invitation to us, and we respond with adoration through songs. We feel God convict us of our failures, blindness, or wrongdoing, and we respond with confession and a commitment to do better. We hear the word of God proclaimed, and we respond with songs offering our resources and committing to live this world out in our lives outside of the sanctuary. The directory continues to note that the church's mission springs from its worship. Where we glimpse the reality and the promise of God's eternal realm, the church's mission flows back into worship as we bring God the joy and suffering of the world. Life and worship cannot be separated. Our everyday cannot be separated from meaningful participation with each other and with God, and to try to keep the two separate is exactly to miss the point. One of the most impactful assignments that I've had in seminary so far was from this semester in a class titled The Holy Spirit and Social Justice. It's been an incredible class. In this class, I was required to partner with a classmate and meet 4 times over the semester to pray together. In our time of prayer, my friend Kaylee and I would ask each other 3 questions to prepare. Where did you see God? Where did you see a need for God? And what is a cause in the world we can be praying for? And this practice was impactful not just because we'd spend a few hours in discussion and prayer in deep and meaningful topics, but also because the weeks between our prayer meetings, I found myself paying attention in a new way to what was going on in the world around me. Because I knew that I would need to tell Kaylee where I saw God since our last meeting, I had to keep my eyes, ears, and heart open to actually notice God and God's actions in the world. Because I knew I would have to tell Kaylee where I saw a need for God. I saw the hurt. I saw the needs and the frustrations of the people in my community in a new and deep way. Often when I shared my answer to those questions with Kaylee, I would start with the need that I saw in the community and would end with how I saw God meet that need. Because I saw the need, because I was watching and I saw when God acted in normal or miraculous ways, I was able to join with my friend and offer thanks to God about that. And I think this is what the directory is pointing at when it says our worship and our everyday flow into each other. We notice God acting, or we notice a need for God's action in our everyday lives, and we respond together by testifying and joining together in our appeals to this active and loving God. John believed in a God who acted in mundane and miraculous ways. Our Reformed tradition believes in a God who acts in our world today. I believe in a God who has and will feed the hungry, clothe the naked, house the houseless, heal the sick, free the captive, elevate the oppressed, bring low the powers and principalities that use their power and their resources to exploit others, to exploit systems, to exploit governments, to exploit the earth. I believe in a God who loves creation so much that amid our acts of betrayal, pride, contempt, and apathy, God is already holding out a hand and saying, I love you, come back to me. You are welcome in my arms. I believe in a God who over thousands of years pursued and acted in love towards humanity and all of creation. And even in the midst of our constant failure and rejection, made the selfless decision to become human, born of a virgin, to bless the lame, to walk again, give sight to the blind, to cast out demons, to promise us an advocate. I believe in a God who loves us so entirely that we are invited to join in this crazy and miraculous story with our adoration, with our work, with our actions, with our testimonies, with our wealth, with our hurts, with our fellowship, with our love. I have seen and I must testify. Where have you seen God in this Christmas season? Maybe it was in the smiling faces of your family. Maybe it was in the bounty of your Christmas feast. Maybe you received a particular blessing through a gift or a Christmas bonus from work. For those of you who volunteered during the holidays, perhaps you saw God in the faces of those you served. Maybe you saw God in watching the food pantry bins here at PCWS fill up. Maybe you saw God in the quiet, in the stillness of life. Maybe you're struggling to think of a time that you saw God recently. That's pretty normal in my experience. But I would encourage you to spend some time reflecting and perhaps starting with the question, where do I see a need for God? If we believe in a God that is powerful and active, and I certainly do, then we should wait and watch for that action to take place. Maybe we see a need for God in the activities of ICE in Chicago, the number of people living in their cars in our area, a friend experiencing grief, a job that is sucking your spirit dry. No need is too big or too small for God. Where do you see a need? Maybe write it down, maybe share it with a friend, maybe pray about it. Maybe definitely pray about it, but watch and wait. And I believe you will see God act in your expectant waiting. Because I think that that's the point. Not just keeping the AC system updated, not just getting a good grade, although both of those are often necessary. I think the point is that God is acting, we are witnessing, and then we are compelled to testify. That every time we call ourselves Christians, we are identifying with John the Baptist, who was among the first to point to Christ and say, that is the point. As we gather for worship, we gather because we believe in a great and powerful and active God who walked on the earth, who still dwells among us, who has, does, and always will love and care for us unconditionally. Yeah, there's a lot of things we can and we should do to facilitate that main point. But I pray that we would never lose sight of that main thing, That even as I get good grades, or as we pass on our faith to the next generation, we wouldn't forget that the point isn't just keeping the ball rolling just like it always has. The point is to encounter the divine and proclaim that encounter among each other, ordering our lives in service and the adoration of God who creates, renews, and redeems, a God who acts. Because I think we have seen, and if we have seen, we must testify. Amen.